What's up, guys? This is Corey with DBS Decks, and we are back today taking a look at the top 16 lists from the Columbus Regional this last weekend. So it took us a little bit longer to get all the information that we needed, but we finally got it all here. So we're going to kind of look over the list. Now, you have to remember how the regional are split up currently. We have our invite only and then our open regional. So right now we're just looking at the invite portion of the regional. So these are the people who already gotten special invites either from other tournaments like preliminaries and things like that, team events, this, that, and another. So this is more of a focused tournament as opposed to where the open, anybody can just go and participate in the open. So we will look right here at our breakdown here. So compared to last week, big changes that you can already notice is Kidku dominated. Kidku ended up winning the event this weekend after having a pretty, in my estimation, a poor showing last weekend. It did really well. There were 5 in the top 16, so about 33% was Kidku. There's a couple different variations, mostly blue focused. There are some red variants as well. Then we kind of go on from there. The next represented deck was Height of Mastery, Broly Height of Mastery. Kind of expected there. We had 3 of those in top, I believe. And then everything else is pretty much just a one of. We had a Lord Slug, a Purunga Victory Strike, 1 Shenron Gogeta, making a big drop from last weekend, 1 Red Frieza Swamp, which is really cool to see, 1 Shilai and Limo, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan from the anniversary box, 1 Toa, 1 Yellow Dende, and then 1 Janemba. So really cool stuff overall, but let's go ahead and get on over into our lists. Alright, so first up we've got David Olding with his Frieza Swamp. Really cool to see Frieza Swamp do well. It's been one of those fringe kind of decks for a while. It's got really great potential. I think it's actually a really good call in the meta right now just because it has the ability to go pretty aggressive and be defensive with a lot of really nice cards. So for those of you unaware, Frieza on his front side, he can cut a life and look at the top 2 cards, choose a Frieza's Army card that you find there and add it to your hand. And then on the back side, you can KO a battle card, pitch a card from your hand, and then Frieza gains plus 5k until the end of your opponent's turn. So he's a 20k defensively, which is really nice, and a 20k offensively, which again is very nice. Really good numbers to be. He's just like a perma Senzu Bean effect for 2 turns, which is really good. Moving into his actual list, he's really running hardcore on the swap engine. You know, he's got a 4/4 line of everything. He has splashing yellow, which is really cool to see. Big things that you can have access to when you run yellow, specifically is Cold Bloodlust, because you are Frieza's Army leader. You also get access to Death Ball since you're just a straight Frieza, not like Frieza BR or anything like that. These are both really, really great cards to have access to with yellow. You also get access to cards like Mutashio or Mutaito, which is a very good card, as we talked about last weekend. Godly Destruction Whis is good for a lot of different strategies, especially with like the Shenrons and things like that were floating around that running to do a lot of like energy manipulation. That's really good to have. Nothing like super like out of the ordinary or spicy per se. Kabba's Awakening is a really good card. He's got an interesting little combination here with the Loyal Kikono. So Loyal Kikono is a 1 cost 10k combo. Whenever you combo with it, you can choose a red battle or red extra card from your drop area, add it to your hand. So for 1 on the Loyal Kikono, you can get the Kabba's Awakening back, and then effectively get plus 16k for 1, which is really strong and really messes with a lot of numbers. So that's really cool to see. He is running the Frieza's Army Reborn SCR, which is just a really great card overall. Body Change Ginyu is just really great. Zarbon Hidden Potential is a great sack target off the Frieza's ability. Whenever he gets popped, you give something minus 15k and then you draw a card. So you're losing the neg that you would normally get from the Frieza's ability by having to pitch a card, because Zarbon just lets you draw. So really good stuff there. Moving into our sideboard, we've got 2 Paralysis Technique, which is just a really great negate overall. It gives everything on your opponent's side of the board minus 5k for the duration of the turn. So for a lot of like swarm decks and things like that, it's a really good call. We've got 1 Kami Global Unifier, 2 No Escape Sun Goku, 2 Time Control Klonoa, 2 Toki Toki. We've got 2 Mercenary Tau, 2 Trunks Overseeing Time, and then 2 Dimensional Banisher Fu. Overall, I think this is a very, very solid list. There's nothing I have really overly like complaints about or anything like that. It's a very tight list. It looks like it could be very consistent. The sideboard is very nice. Again, nothing I'm overly negative about. I really enjoy this list. It's very good to see new leaders kind of do well, especially ones that kind of been forgotten, like Frieza Swamp. But very excited to see if this has any future moving forward. All right, next up we've got David. He is running Shenron Gogeta. I believe he's just running more of your traditional, just mono blue Shenron Gogeta. Yeah, I say traditional. He does have some tech options. Most notably, you see right here in the middle, he's running Beyond Darkish Demigra, which you don't typically see those in the Shenron Gogeta lists. But it's not a terrible option. I don't know if it's overly necessary, but it is an option. Like we said, he's running pretty straightforward mono blue. He is including the Sensu Beans, which a lot of those lists last week did not, so that's a definitely plus there for me. He is including the Newfound Power Purunga and the Ultimate Fusion Gogeta. Both are great options right now, especially the 5-drop Gogeta. He's a really great option. He's got his Goku Vegeta lines, 4 of the 20k vanilla, and then 4 of the At All Cost Vegeta. At All Cost is just a great win condition by himself sometimes, so it's very strong. Striving to be the best isn't overly necessary, but I can understand why you would put it. But other than that, he is sticking with the 6 normal balls and 1 1-star ball, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Personally, I'd probably just prefer to run just 7 normal Dragon Balls, but I understand wanting to cause some disruption. And then his negate options are he's got 4 Power Bursts and then 2 Whis' Coercion, which is pretty standard. 6 to 7 negates is kind of where you want to be in a deck like this, so that's fine. Moving on into our sideboard, we've got 2 King Yinma. So this is kind of a cute tech options for different things. You're able to put 2 of your opponent's battle cards from their drop area back into their deck. You can kind of mess up on counts like with Toa and things like that, if they've not flipped yet or different reasons like that, or even like Broly Hide of Mastery. You can kind of mess with their numbers. Sometimes they struggle getting 7 in the drop for sparking, so if you can drop like a King Yinma and like set some of that back, it's kind of a good strategy to kind of push the turns back push the game back an additional turn. He's got 1 King Piccolo Limitless Power. It's kind of what we talked about last week. It's a nifty little side tech for a lot of these World Martial Arts Tournament decks running around. So not bad there. A free 20k Double Striker is never bad. 2 Kami Global Unifier, 3-time Control Chrono, going a little heavy there, but that's fine. I'm never going to complain about running great cards like that. 1 Mercenary Tau, again like we talked about, I think you want a little bit more access to this, but that's probably fine. 2 Crisis Crushers on Goku. I don't know if you need this because you're already running the Striving, because Striving's got Barrier, Crisis doesn't. I think Striving's probably better. I mean, it just puts you back 1 additional turn. I don't know if there's many decks that's going to become like a huge difference there, so I'd probably just prefer the Striving. You could probably cut the Crisis. And then finally 3 Haru, which again, like we talked about last week, is just a great addition to add right now. There's so many of these Broly decks in particular floating around, that Haru is just a fantastic card to run. The only thing, I'm trying to see if there's anything that just like specifically I'd say maybe need to be changed. Like I said, you could probably cut out these Crisis Crushers and maybe add like a Tien Shinhan Returning Fire, or maybe increase your Mercenary Tau options, but other than that, it's a very solid list. Obviously, as we saw, Shenron Gogeta like really did well last weekend. This week we only had 1 that made it into top cut. Kind of what we talked about last week. I think people just kind of got caught off guard with it, and this weekend people were way more prepared for it. But overall, still good to see decks like this do well. All right, next up we've got Thomas Higgins running one of the Kid Qs, one of the mini Kid Qs. This is a kind of a interesting build in and of itself. It's running, it's blue-yellow, and it has a lot of different techie type options, which I'm personally not a huge fan of, but you can understand what a lot of them do and why they're here. So we'll start up with his vanilla package. So he's got 3 Super Saiyan Vegeta, 1 Super Saiyan Goku, 4 Deborah, and then 3 of the yellow Super Saiyan Blue Goku. So obviously he's not main decking the Gogeta Hero Revived, but he does have that option. He is sideboarding it, so he can side into that if he feels like it's necessary for longer type games. That's overall not too bad. We are running 4 Fearless Assault Krillin, which is good. You do need some form of self-awakening with a lot of the decks that are floating around right now. He's also running the Source of Power, which is an additional method of self-awakening, but this also allows you to get like a 20k dual attacker out for 3, which is pretty nice. We are sticking with the Training Ready Krillin, which, as we talked about before, is just kind of a necessary, I think, for these Vanilla Q decks moving forward. Mutai Ito, which is a great card in general. I'm not like a huge fan of this 20k blocker Vegeta just because he costs 3 yellow. I feel like you could just add like another Super Saiyan Vegeta here. I mean, I guess if you want additional yellow, but I feel like you're probably fine. He's running 2 of the Wishmaker Dende to kind of search for the Dragon Balls, but as you'll notice, what he is missing, he is not running any of the Android 8, as we saw with Joey Palladino's list from last weekend. That's kind of a choice people are making to add more additional like tech type cards. I'm not a huge fan of that personally. I think the Android 8 combination is just so good. I don't know why you wouldn't want to run it. But that gives you options for more tech type options. So he's only running 4 of the 4-star ball, which again, that's probably fine. I think 6 is pretty standard. If you saw last weekend, I think Joey ran like 3. So he's somewhere in the middle there, which is fine. He is main decking Bad Ring Laser. Power Burst, he is running 1 crack. And then 2 further instruction Champa, which is probably fine. I kind of like a 2-2 split, or even like a 3-2 split or something like that. I think you want access to both of those, just because Crack can't get like your big Deborah's double strike, but I understand why that's there. 1 Mysterious Saiyan, the Masked Warrior, in the main deck. I don't know if that's overly necessary in the main, as opposed to some other Overwhelm type options, but it's really great in the mirror. If you're expecting a lot of it, a lot of the deck, which it's kind of safe to assume to expect a lot of Vanilla Q. Pretty much since it's came out, it's been one of the more played decks in the game, so it's probably kind of a safe option, I suppose. Moving into our sideboard, here's where he's got the 2 Gogeta Hero Revived, which these are, like I said, this is one of the better closers in the game. He does have a lot of access to it in the main deck. So I probably would have preferred to just see this in the main deck. I think that's better for you more often than it isn't. So it's kind of interesting there. He's got 3 Frieza biding his time. I'm kind of curious to what exactly he was fearing to play this. There's not a lot that I can think of just right now off the top of my head. That's a 2-drop that you just want to like tap down. Moving on, we've got 2 Crisis Crushers, we've got 2 Haru, we've got 2 Tien Shinhan Returning Fire, 3 Bardock Fully Unleashed, going really heavy on the Bardock. I don't know if that's necessary, and then an additional Mass Saiyan, the Mysterious Warrior. So overall, I think he's going maybe a little bit too techy here. I think he's getting a little bit too cute with a lot of his little options here and there. I probably would have liked to see a little bit more consistency here in the list, and especially in the sideboard. A lot of these, I think, are probably overthinking it a little bit too much, especially like these Frieza's biding his time and the additional Bardock. But let's move on. All right, next up we've got Tyron Dover. He is running Purunga Victory Strike, who continues to see success in this meta right now, which is still, like I said, very interesting to see. Very good to see for me personally, because like I said, I was a big proponent of this deck months ago. So glad to see it still continue to do well. He's running a pretty standard list here. He's running the Crisis Crusher main, which I do prefer. I think that's necessary. He's running a Crusher Ball. I don't know if that's overly necessary. Probably would have just preferred to run Mutai Ito. He may not have had access to it, and so that may be why the Crusher Ball's there, but I feel like Mutai Ito is just better like all the time, just because it's a 5k combo if you ever don't need it. And Crusher Ball never gets past Deflect, or Mutai Ito always does. Other than that, pretty standard. Everything else, Dragon Seeker Sorbet, Dangerous Journey Bulma. Yeah, it's kind of, like I said, especially with these lists, they have to be so tight between the Height of Mastery engine and the Dragon Balls and everything like that. You're going to have a pretty straightforward, maybe like a 40 card list, and then you can kind of include different techs here and there. So overall, it's pretty standard. Moving in the side, we've got 2 Battering, which is fine, 2 Fearless Assault Krillin. This is just kind of your self-awakening card if you get the Goku Awakened Power stuck in the life. Minus Killy Zone. Probably would have liked to seen maybe 1 or 2 more of these. I feel like these are really important with all the Mutai Ito running around, especially if you're a Victory Strike deck. 2 Time Control Klonoa, 2 Mercenary Tau, 1 Trunks Overseeing Time, 2 Tien Shinhan, and then 2 Bardock Fully Unleashed. Kind of a standard sideboard. Like I said, I probably would have liked to seen more minus Killy Zone. I feel like you could maybe like cut the Crisis or Crusher Ball if you wanted to include more like minus Killy Zones, or find room for Mutai Ito somewhere. I don't know if you necessarily need to worry about Tien Shinhan. With Shenron, you should be able to win just on turn 4 versus majority of the Victory Strike decks. Majority of the Jinba decks, excuse me. But overall, nothing here to really talk about too much. It's pretty your standard Purunga deck. Alright, next up we've got Jose Mercado running Broly Height of Mastery. He is running a teched out version of this as well. I understand why people are about running the teched out options, but I think, as we've seen from players like Anthony Hernandez, like the more consistent you make these lists, just kind of the better they do off. So getting into the list, he is running kind of like the full swap package. He's got his Grandpa Gohan's Dependable Dynasty. He's got Guinea here to support, which are all really great options. He's got the Ultimate Potential Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. He's running a 2-2 Pure Hearted and Sugesh split, and he's also running Planet. I feel like most of these lists have kind of gotten away from the Pure Hearted and Planet as opposed in favor of Jocko, which is a better super combo overall. He is running 4 of the Bardock from the Anniversary Box, which is a really great card in general. Like I said, when we're talking about like the tech type options, he's running the Toki Toki and the Time Patrol Cronoa in the main. And time controls his only target of the Toki Toki, so I feel like you could just cut the Toki Toki and then add like an additional time control if you're really that concerned about it, because that's your only target. Just might as well just run the time control, in my opinion. He's running the Mutai Ito, which is good. He's giving himself a little bit of diversity. He's running 1 of the Barrier Gohan that swaps into Path, which isn't bad. That gives your whole chain barrier, which is nice. He's also running the 2 of the 3-drop Cooler, which is effectively like a battering laser. I don't know that the format's slow enough for something like this. I think it's an interesting option. I just don't ever feel like we're going to be in a format where you can just commit to having 3 yellow energy open in order to play it. It does draw you cards, which is really nice, but like I said, 3 energy is really heavy. Moving on into the additional stuff, we've got, so I'm not... In this deck, I think it's fine. You can run the Bardock and the Mirror. I probably would have liked to seen an additional Mirror just because that's such a good closing card. But he's only running I'd probably like to see like a 3-2 line of the Mirror and the Bardock. Especially because you're running Guinea, you can just fill up the drop. And then on his negates and stuff, he's got 3 Time Magic, 1 Flying Nimbus, which is kind of standard now, is what you're seeing in a lot of things. I think Time Magic's still better, and you reserve Nimbus for the side. 1 Battering. I probably would like to see another one there. I think, like I said, I think these Vegetas could be cut to add some consistency. You can get rid of the Toki Toki. Source of Power is a swap target off the Dependable. There's not super many often times that you're going to want to use it in this list, just because you are wanting to stay at I'm not going to say a high life, but a higher life than maybe a traditional deck. So I don't know that it's overly relevant, but in certain situations where you need to go more aggro, I can understand wanting to play it. But other than that, like I said, I'd probably cut the Coolers, cut the Planets, cut the Nimbus, cut the Toki Toki, different things like here, and just kind of increase some of our more, like, the numbers of the cards we want to see a little bit more often. Moving on into the side, he is running 2 Cold Bloodlust. I didn't even notice that he's not running Cold Bloodlust in the main. That's a big no-no in my opinion. Cold Bloodlust is one of the best cards in the game. You want access to that. He's also running the Maester engine in the side, which is cute, I guess, but I feel like we've gotten to the point where we know that's the best way to play Broly, so I feel like those should be in the main. Moving on from there, we've got Mercenary Tau. He's going heavy in the Mercenary Tau. He's got 3 Crisis Crusher, and then 1 Trunks Power Overseeing Time. Like I said, I think you can make a little changes here to make this overall just a little bit more consistent. Nothing against the player, but I feel like this deck did better just on the fact that it was a Broly Height of Mastery deck, and sometimes that's just good enough just to win games by itself. I feel like if this was a little bit more consistent, he might have had the opportunity to do better in Top Cut. Alright, moving on, we've got Mark Tyner from DBS Decks, actually, one of our very own. He got into Top Cut playing Lord Slug, which is what got him his invite here to begin with, so it's really cool to see. He's running a relatively straightforward Lord Slug list. He does have some inclusions that you don't typically see. One in particular, we're looking at the Paragus the Sacrifice and the Newfound Power Sun Gohan. These are both cards that you don't see like a whole ton anymore. Paragus is one that you don't see typically at all, but it gives you options to like draw and things like that, so it's not terrible. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. He's running a 3 Shocking Death Ball, 1 Preemptive split. I still probably would have liked 4 Shocking Death Ball. I do like the 1 Preemptive. I'd probably even like 2 there. But other than that, main deck is pretty straightforward. He is running Food the Dark Banisher, which I think is a great call for the Lord Slug deck or any kind of just resource management type deck. Moving into the side, we've got an additional double impact Krillin for people who like to side in the Taos, which is great. A Preemptive Strike, 2 Killie Zone, 2 Kame the Global Unifier, 3 Mercenary Tau, 2 Crisis Crusher, 3 Haru, great option there, and then 1 Dimensional Banisher Fu. Overall, just a pretty solid sideboard. I like what he's doing here and what he has access to. Overall, this is kind of like we talked about with a lot of these lists. You're going to see 40 to 45 card mirrors and a lot of these kind of archetypes, and this is pretty much what you're going to see. So pretty straightforward, so great job there, Mark. Alright, next up we've got Tyler Payne running a Broly High to Mastery, Victory Strike. He is running a more traditional version, running the Maester package. He's running a little bit of the, almost I want to say older variation, because he is running the Prodigal Dynasty Son Goten. A lot of the decks now have cut these, just give you more room for more consistency cards. He's running Muta Ito, which is good. He's running a small swap package, not like a big one, because he's only got 3 Dependable Dynasty and 2 Gine. He's also going heavy on the Sugesh. He's got a 3-1 split with the Jocko, which that's a call to make, and I'm actually totally fine with that. If you're gonna be aggressive with it, be aggressive with it. I'm totally fine going with a 3-1 line here of the Jocko and Sugesh. I think that's fine. Overall, everything else is pretty standard. You can see just kind of where cuts have been made for like the Prodigal Dynasties and things like that. He's also running Dimensional Banisher Fu in the main as opposed to something like Mira. This is really good versus like Broly and things like that, so I can understand why it's there. But like I said, you can cut these like dynasties and you can kind of make room for some more of your cards here to kind of just shore up your numbers. Moving on to the sideboard, we've got a Battering Laser, a Time Magic, Vegeta striving to be the best, 2 Minus Zones, 2 Time Control Konoha, 2 Crisis Crusher, 2 Tien Shinhan Returning Fire, 2 Trunks Power Overseeing Time, and then 2 of the Bardock Fillet Unleashed. So pretty standard side of what you're going to see. A lot of decks are more leaning to including Minus Zone in the main, just because Muta Ito is floating around so much everywhere, but I can understand keeping it on the side. I think that's probably fine. But overall, just a pretty standard list of what you're going to see. It's very similar to the Anthony Hernandez list. It's a little less consistent just because he's running like the Prodigal Dynasties and cutting a lot of these numbers here and things like that, but overall, pretty solid. Alright, next up we've got Tony Denning running Janemba. So Tony is running a pretty standard Janemba list. He is running a little bit heavier on the black package because he's also running the Toki Toki, which is probably fine because you are actually running additional targets to get off of it. He's going heavy on the Childish Heart, which you don't see like a whole ton anymore. Usually this is a lower count. He's also his Janemba line's 3-3-2, which is usually like 4-3-1 or 3-3-1 or something like that. So he's getting a little bit heavier on the Reality Bender, which is I think is fine. Godstrike Bears in the main, which is starting to become more of a staple in these lists for obvious reasons. It's a really great card to have access to. 1 Chomp in the main. I think Chomp is great to have in the main. But other than that, pretty standard everything here. He's running the 2 Mafuba main as opposed to like a Whis Coercion. I think that's probably fine. There's a lot of big bombs in the format that you can kind of deal with Mafuba, so that's fine. Moving on to the side, we've got 1 Furthering Destruction Champa. We've got 3 Awakening Talent Pants, so that's a great self-awakening option. 4 Whis Coercion, so extra negates, an additional Mafuba. 4 Mercenary Tau, because he knows how bad you are to hand destruction, so that's a great option there. And then 2 Trunks Power Overseeing Time. Pretty standard list as far as your sideboard's concerned. You don't see like a Tien Shinhan, but you're not overly worried about seeing a lot of Janemba mirrors right now. There's just not a lot of access to it in the format. Alright, next up we've got Simon. I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I'll butcher it. Running Kidku. So he is running a mono blue variation on the Kidku. A pretty standard list here. He's running the Training Buddy Krillins. He's running the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the balls and 4 of the Bonds of Friendship. So he's going your standard package there, which I think is fine. He's running the Gogeta engine. His targets for that are 4 of the blue Super Saiyan Son Goku, 3 of the Super Saiyan Vegeta, and then 2 at all cost Vegeta, which I think is a great inclusion as well. And then 4 Deborah as his big bomb. He is running Scientist Fu in the main, as opposed to something like Beyond Darkness Demigra, which I think is actually a really good call, just because getting to those turn 5s is really hard. I may have liked to have seen like a Dark Banisher Fu or something like that, but I think Scientist Fu is just really fine as well. But overall, pretty solid standard list of what you're going to see. Moving on the side, we've got 2 Ultimate Fusion Gogeta, which is good. 3 Time Control Konoha, so he's going heavy there. 3 Dimensional Support Trunks. 1 Burst Energy Super Saiyan Bardock, 4 Tien Shinhan Returning Fire, that's very heavy. 1 Mass Saiyan, and then 1 Beyond Darkest Demigger, so that's where his SCR is. So just kind of go over the dimensional support chunks, because we'll see it here a little bit later too. This is kind of the call for the weekend. You know, like we talked about last week, Kid Q had to adapt, and one of those ways to adapt is become more aggressive, which the deck absolutely has potential to. And dimensional support trunks is one of those ways to help push that aggression. So seeing access to this is just a great inclusion for these decks. If you go back to when the deck initially came out, these were kind of heavily played in a lot of these Kid Q lists. So I like seeing these come back. This is one of my favorite cards in the game, and it's just a great like aggro option, which with Kid Q, that's what you're needing to do to get pat, so these turn 4s aren't so brutal on you, or you can just win before you get to them. So overall, just a pretty solid, pretty standard list. Alright, next up we've got Shane Early. He is also on Kid Q. He is running the blue-red variation. He's got a couple interesting options. So my Trusted Lackey, just pay 1, search for a ball. This is basically like the Wishmaker Dende, just for red. He's running Super Zarbon, Super Saiyan Son Goku, Yamcha, Deborah, Great Saiyaman, and the Super Saiyan Vegeta. Those are all his vanilla options. He's running a little bit heavier. He's probably not running as heavy as I want on the 2 drops actually, just because you are playing Training Buddy Krillin and the Dimensional Support Trunks in the main. I'd probably like to see a little bit more of these, so you can get value out of those. He is running the Fu the Dark Banisher, which is really good. He's running 4 of the 4-star balls, but he is running the Android package. He's using the Mai to kind of serve as additional balls as well, which is probably fine. It's cool to see some of these red variations start popping up. I do think they have the potential to be very good themselves, so pretty cool to see. Moving on the sideboard, we've got an additional Further Instruction Champa, 3 Killy Zone, 3 Haru Haru, 3 Tien Shinhan, a Dimensional Banisher Fu, 2 Master the Mysterious Warrior, and then 2 more Fu the Dark Banisher. I feel like that's probably a little bit heavier on our overall package. I think you could cut one of the Mysterious Warriors and maybe one of the Fu the Dark Banisher. I don't know if you need access to, so right now he's running 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 overall cards. I think it's probably a little bit heavy. I think you could cut some of those numbers down. Probably would like to see 1 more additional dimensional support trunks, just because you want to see access to this early, so you probably want to see more of that. And you know, the vanillas are hard to really like argue about. People kind of run what their favorites are and everything like that, so there's nothing wrong at all with the vanilla options that he's running. Like I said, I just think I'd probably want to see a little bit more access to some of these 2-drop 20Ks, so your dimensional support trunks has more targets. Alright, next up we've got Blake Rudolph, also on Vanilla Kid Q. He is running a mono blue variation, running kind of your standard stuff there. He's going a little bit more on the aggressive stuff, which I like. He's got 3 Hidden Power E Supreme Kai, 3 Awakening Talipan, great option. His vanillas are 3 the Super Saiyan Son Goku, 2 Super Saiyan Vegeta, 4 Deborah, and 1 Surprise Attack Frieza, which is a really great combination all around. He is running the Adventure Begins and the Android 8, which, like I said, I think that's necessary. He is running Trading Buddy Krillin and Dimensional Support Trunks, so I feel like you should probably bump up some of your 2-drop 20K Saiyans a little bit more. Personally, just like I said, you want to make sure you have targets. He's also running the Bardock. I don't know if I like both of them at the same time, the Trunks and the Bardock, just because they kind of serve the same purpose for that same amount of energy. So I can understand, like I said, he is a great aggressive draw 2 20K swing. Probably made have liked to seen like the Fu the Dark Banisher or something like that instead. But other than that, it's pretty standard. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 4-star balls, which is like I think is where you want to be at. Moving on to the sideboard, he runs a yellow package here. So we've got Godstrike Beerus, 1, 2, 3, 4, Mutaito, really heavy. 4 Zarbon, really heavy there. We've got 1, 2 the Haru Haru, Tien Shinhan Returning Fire, Dimensional Banisher Fu, and the 2 Mass Saiyan, the Mysterious Warrior. So overall pretty standard. Like I said, if you're not aware of the Zarbon combination, you need to get aware of it pretty quick. This is how you can win the Height of Mastery matchup with Kid Q. So they tap down your Kid Q and your Android 8, and they go to swing in with a Victory Strike. You combo Zarbon, and tap the Kid Goku, combo the Kid Goku, pop the Victory Strike. And you want to see access to more of these, because now that people are aware that this is a thing, they're going to try to play around that, and to prevent them from playing around it, you run more of them so you see them more often, and you can untap multiple times in a turn. So really good there. Nothing, like I said, to really complain about. I just probably personally would have liked to seen a little bit maybe more of the 2-drop 20Ks. Alright, next up we've got Maverick Steel, which is a really awesome name. I'm running Yellow Dende. He's running a almost pretty standard Yellow Dende list. There's a couple things I'm kind of curious about. One in particular is your choice of super combo. I just don't understand why not running the Ancient Wisdom Guru. Is this a sparking one? I'm not 100% sure. It is recyclable thanks to the dependable Journey Bulma. You just don't get it back off the leader flip. So that's kind of a here or there option. But other than that, the list is pretty straightforward. Maybe a little bit heavy on the surprise attack Friezas. He's also only running one of the 1-star ball. More traditionally, you're seeing 2 of the 2-star ball, or 2 of the 1-star balls now. I think 1-star ball is probably fine, just one of them. He's running a 2-2 line of the Occupation of Evil and the 7-drop, which I think is accurate. Everything else looks pretty standard and pretty solid. Moving on to the sideboard, we've got 2 Flying Nimbus, 1 Mutai Ito. Probably would have liked to see more of those. Could be a question of what he has access to as well. 2 Striving to be the best. Like we talked about last week, this is a great kind of tech option for the Clanetera Mecha Frieza. 2 Dende do the job, so people were kind of fearing Shinron a little bit, so this is a great option to kind of get around that. 3 Heavenly Wizard Demigra. Like we talked about last week, is another play off the Clanetera. 2 Crisis Crusher, and 3 Tien Shinhan Returning Fire. I still would have liked to see access to Mercenary Tao, but overall I think this is a pretty solid list. Next up we've got Brian Reed running Chile Gohan, which is a really cool list. Normally when you're seeing the Chile stuff, you're seeing like Chile Victory Strike, but he's going into the Piercing Strike Gohan, and then the Gohan support that we got in the Anniversary box going up into the SCR Broly, which is kind of nifty. So overall, what he's really trying to do is get into the 4-drop, that gets to the 7-drop, and just kind of win games there. And then if that doesn't work out, he can use the Paragus as a sacrifice to pop the 7-drop to play the 8-drop for free. So some synergy there. The only thing I'm like crazy about is he's running a Plea for Salvation in the main as opposed to Kind Wish. And Kind Wish brings out these Brolys for you, where Plea of Salvation doesn't. So I probably would have liked to see Kind Wish there instead, but I understand what he's trying to do, because Plea for Salvation does give you a pop as well, so that's probably fine. He is running a Super Dragon Ball and 6 normal balls, which I think is fine. Minus Killing Zone's really good. Cold Bloodlust. The great thing about Chile, she gets access to so many of these great extra cards. But really cool to see the strategy actually start doing well. It's just good to see these Anniversary box cards get some love in general. Alright, next up we've got Eden Salinas, and he is our champion for the event, I believe. I don't want to be quoted on that, but I'm pretty sure he's the one that ended up taking the event. This is actually the exact list that we saw a little bit 2 lists ago. They ran the exact same 65 cards, main deck and sideboard. So same kind of thoughts that I had there, I still have here. I still probably would have preferred to see a little bit more of the 2K20 or the 2-drop 20Ks, just so Dimensional Sport Trunks has a little bit more value and can hit a little bit more often. But I think that's probably fine. I love the Awakening Talent Pan in the main, just having access to Self-Awakening. Training Buddy Krillin, like we've been talking about for a while, is just a must-have now in this format because Crisis Crusher is so dominant and so prevalent. It's just like in several lists. But overall, a very, very, very solid list. It's kind of good to see Kid Ku do well again, so people aren't so hard on the Victory Strike stuff. Alright, next up we've got Christian. I didn't have access to his last name, so that's why we're just going with Christian. But he's running Broly Added Mastery as well. He is running a heavy swap engine, so he's not even going into the Dependable Dynasty, he's just going into the Intrepid Dynasty, which is the barrier one that goes into Path. So he doesn't have that access to go to like a Storm type engine and be aggressive, which is kind of here or there. I feel like that's the better way to go. This is the safer way to go, just because the Intrepid Dynasty does have barrier. He's running the Prodigal Dynasty to protect his stuff. He's not running the Roshi Shin stuff, which like we talked about, I feel like you do want access to. 2 Dimensional Banisher Fu in the main, 3 Time Magic and 3 Nimbus, so that's kind of where he's made some of his cuts. He's going heavy in on the negates, and then he's running 2 Planet Vegeta and then 2 Sugesh. Like we talked about earlier, I don't think Vegeta is necessary. He's only running 2 Coastal Bloodlust, I think you want more access to that. But he's running 3 minus Killy in the main, and no Mutai Ito in the main. Moving on into our side, we've got 3 Godly Destruction Whis, 2 Mutai Ito, 2 Vegeta Striving to be the best, 3 Mercenary Tao, 3 Tien Shan Returning Fire, and then 2 Trunks Power Overseeing Time. pretty standard, solid sideboard actually. All these are pretty great cards. The only thing I don't see access to is Time Control Klonoa actually, which is interesting. It's been a while since I've seen a list that didn't have access to that actually, so it's kind of interesting. I wonder if he ended up getting punished for that at all. Alright, and then finally we've got Isaiah Herring running Toa. So Toa was top cut coming out of Swiss. I believe I remember reading that he lost in top 8, but we'll kind of get into his list. So he's running kind of what I'm starting to feel like is more of your standard variation of this list with the Toki Toki engine. I've been a big component of the Toki Toki engine in Toa. Just fixes a lot of your problems, lets you shuffle back in your super combos, makes you a little bit more toolboxy with Kami, the Klonoa, and the Dende. Dende could be relevant with a lot of the Shenron Gogeta floating around if it was being played, so it's a pretty cool inclusion. Typically I just run like 3 Klonoa and 3 Kami, but I can understand why you run the Dende as well. Other than that, he's running the Umbral Invitation Toa and the Time Ruler Toa, so he does have a little bit of the Steal Your Stuff engine going. I don't know how often that ever really comes into play, but it is an option for you. But other than that, it's pretty standard. You've got 4 of the Mira Self-Reformed, 2 of the Dark Absorption. Like I said, I'm not personally a huge fan of the Dark Absorption. It gives you more targets, obviously, but I don't know if it's overly necessary. 3 Power Burst, going a little bit light on the gates, but that's probably fine. But other than that, pretty standard list. Like I said, I think this is the future of Toa with the Toki Toki engine to be able to draw cards and shuffle super combos and things back in your deck. I think that is the way to go with Toa moving forward. Moving on into our side, we've got 4 Dark Power Black Mass Sand going super heavy here, but it is a Self-Awakening card, lets you swing and things like that. It's good versus random like Wish decks too as well. 2 Dudley Defenders and Goku, so this is a great out for like Victory Strike if you can deal with the Height of Mastery, and they get into Victory Strike and things like that. Deadly Defender kind of gives them a big like cause for pause. Moving on, we've got 3 Haru Haru, just a great option in any deck right now with all the yellow floating around, but especially in Toa, just because she's a black leader and he fills the drop for her as well. We got 2 Mira from the Darkness. This is a little bit more of an aggressive option. I probably would have liked the Mira from the Darkness over the Dark Absorption Mira, but I understand why it's flip-flop like that. And then 2 Tiantian on Returning Fire, and then 2 through the Dark Banisher. Personally, I probably would have liked to seen Tau in this. You know, like we talked about, Toa has a problem with hand destruction in general, and I would like to see a little bit of defense to that, but I think overall it's not too bad. Toa is still creaking in there. Like I said, it was first in Swiss going into day 2, lost in top 8, so we'll continue to probably see Toa moving forward. People are still going to be iterating the list, but like I said, I think the future of these lists relies in this Toki Toki engine. Just the draw and then the shuffle and everything like that is just too good for what Toa is trying to do. But anyway guys, that is it from DBS Decks. That is our invite top 16. We will get into our open regional top 16, as well as probably the regional that was up in Canada. As soon as we get access to all that information, you can be sure to find it over at dbsdecks.com, and we will see y'all next time.